"Grace, it's time for you to leave," my mother-in-law declared, her voice booming so intensely it reminded me of the roar of sea bears in the harbor. "We're embarking on a luxurious cruise, just the four of us," I interjected, seeking clarification, but my mother-in-law's countenance only soured further, twisting into a scornful scowl. "Did you actually believe you, who can't even manage simple household tasks, would join us on such an extravagant trip? How presumptuous of you," she scorned. "Here, take this money. A daughter-in-law as inept as her doesn't deserve enjoyment. She couldn't possibly appreciate a vacation like ours. She's too naive to grasp that." I stood silently, swallowing her bitter words without protest. Throughout my life, I had grown accustomed to such mistreatment with no one in my corner and had long since abandoned any hope of defense. My mother-in-law cackled maliciously as she boarded the ship, her mood unclouded by her harshness. Beside her, my father-in-law and husband remained silent. I watched the three of them, a quiet observer, and as the ship began to drift away, I raised my hand and called out a heartfelt, "Goodbye and good luck." As they distanced themselves, my mother-in-law retorted, shouting back at me, oblivious to my indifference. "You're about to embark on a journey I've meticulously planned for you," she boasted. "Trust me, it's the best kind of trip, for me at least. Wait until you discover the surprising revenge I have in store for you. My name is Grace. I'm a 34-year-old homemaker and a clerk at a medium-sized company. I've been married to Lawrence for 6 years, who was a college friend before we lost touch and then reconnected by chance years later. After a year of rekindled friendship, love blossomed and we began dating. Not long after, Lawrence confided in me about his infertility, a revelation that saddened him deeply. When Lawrence shared with me that if we stayed together, having children wouldn't be an option, I wasn't upset. The truth is, I never had a particularly strong desire to become a mother myself. I believed that we could still carve out a happy life together without kids. So, over the years of our child-free marriage, Lawrence and I have enjoyed a peaceful life as a couple. However, maintaining a harmonious relationship with my in-laws has always been a challenge. We live just across the street from them, and since Lawrence is employed at their family business, our interactions are frequent. I don't really mind seeing them often, but the real issue lies in how they treat me. My mother-in-law has a clear preference for Lawrence and doesn't seem to care much for me, often treating me as an inconvenience. She regularly attempts to delegate her household responsibilities to me. For instance, she would say things like, "Grace, I'm swamped with work, so could you handle the laundry and cleaning?" Or, "Don't bother cooking, I can't stomach your food anyway." Whenever I remind her that I also work full-time and it's difficult for me to manage everything, she becomes infuriated. "How dare you talk back to your mother-in-law? You're not suitable to be my son's wife. Pack your bags and leave," she would retort. Adding to the strain, my father-in-law sticks to his old-fashioned views. He often questions me, "Grace, when will you stop working? You're getting older, and it's time you had a child." Or he criticizes my education with remarks like, "What kind of schooling did you even receive?" He doesn't understand that times have changed and it's perfectly acceptable to have a fulfilling family life without children. Yet, he threatens, "If I hear more of this talk, I'll call your company tomorrow and demand they let you go so you can start focusing on having a child." Dealing with my in-laws' constant pressure and outdated expectations is exhausting. Because they hold tightly to their old-fashioned views, I do my best to remain polite in my responses, but often they just pile on more criticism. Sometimes the best thing I can do is just ignore them. Lawrence, sweet as he is, seems to turn a blind eye to their behavior. He's a gentle person who shies away from confrontations, which isn't always beneficial. He avoids upsetting his parents, and sometimes, just to keep the peace, he won't challenge them, even when they're being unfair to me. It's painful to admit, but a significant reason we don't have kids is due to Lawrence's infertility. He's asked me not to mention this to his parents, so I've kept this secret to protect him. But it's tough when he doesn't defend me from their harsh words. Despite these challenges, I deeply love Lawrence. He's a thoughtful husband who often cooks dinner when I come home late from work. This gesture allows us to spend quality time together, especially on weekends. We both adore traveling and have visited many destinations in the 6 years we've been married. One day, Lawrence excitedly handed me a travel brochure. "Grace, wouldn't it be amazing to go on a luxury cruise ship? I've never been on one before, just ferries. It sounds like a lot of fun." I agreed, but mentioned, "We don't have the money for that right now." Optimistically, he suggested, "Let's plan for it 3 years from now. We can save up and make it happen together." That sounded like a solid plan, and we both agreed that with careful saving, we could gather enough funds in 3 years. So, we committed to it and started saving diligently, cutting back on non-essential expenses to stash away every possible penny. Then, 7 months before our planned trip, my mother-in-law popped over unexpectedly. "Hey, I heard we're going on a luxury cruise. Have you booked it yet? If you don't hurry, you might miss out on reservations." I was taken aback by her sudden question and turned to ask Lawrence how she knew about our plans. He was sitting across from me and sheepishly confessed, "Oh, I mentioned it to Mom." We'll be away for more than 9 days, so it seemed natural to tell her. I understood that, but it was still a surprise to see how quickly news traveled. The thought of my in-laws finding out about our cruise plans before we had even booked the tickets filled me with dread. I had hoped to keep the trip a secret from them, but my mother-in-law, ever talkative, let slip during a conversation, "Work might be hectic, but we all need a bit of fun, right?" To my dismay, she grinned and declared, "Of course, we're coming along, and my husband too." I was stunned. This trip was supposed to be a getaway just for Lawrence and me, not an extended family vacation. I glanced at Lawrence, silently pleading with him to say something, to set some boundaries. It had been so long since we had taken a trip just by ourselves, but he remained silent, and I felt utterly powerless. In the weeks that followed, my in-laws frequently dropped by, excitedly discussing the trip. I tried several times to ask Lawrence if it had been his idea to invite them, but every time he brushed off the conversation, claiming he was swamped with work. About a month before our scheduled departure, Lawrence was out late for a business dinner. He didn't return until after midnight, and worried, I was about to drive out to look for him when he suddenly came through the front door. Exhausted, he muttered, "I'm tired, I'm going to bed," and headed straight for the bathroom without another word. I stayed up, restless and anxious, while he seemed oblivious to my distress. Feeling lonely, I picked up his jacket to hang it properly when something fell from the pocket. It was a small gift box, elegantly tied with a ribbon, and a message card was tucked underneath. Curiosity overcame me, and I read the card. The words, "Thank you always, Lawrence, I love you," shocked me to my core. My heart sank with heavy questions. Who was Lawrence meeting last night? What did this message mean? My mind raced with uncertainty, and I couldn't dismiss the nagging feeling that something significant was being kept from me. Who could have given Lawrence this gift, and what did that message truly mean? Unable to sleep, I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning in the living room. The following morning, as Lawrence woke up and stretched with a casual yawn, I couldn't hold back any longer. I confronted him, holding up the gift box and the message card. "What's this? Where were you last night? This doesn't seem like just any business meeting." Caught off guard, Lawrence's eyes widened. "No, it's not what it looks like. It's just a thank you gift for helping out at work," he replied. "A pretty heartfelt thank you to include an I love you," I pointed out, my voice tinged with skepticism. Lawrence stumbled over his words, his explanation muddled and repetitive. "No, it's not like that. It's just..." Feeling a mix of frustration and disappointment, I decided to leave for work to clear my head. Despite the unease gnawing at me, I managed to concentrate and complete my morning tasks. By lunchtime, as I checked my phone, I noticed several missed calls from my in-laws. Reluctantly, I answered when my mother-in-law called again. Hey, Grace, I heard you suspect Lawrence of cheating on you. Our child would never do such a thing. You know, even if he did, that's just a man's instinct, she asserted forcefully. Before I could respond, my father-in-law took over the phone. That's right, and if anything, it's your fault for driving him to cheat. Lawrence is only acting this way because you don't have children and you're always busy with work. Make sure you apologize to my son, got it? His words were accusations, blaming me before he abruptly ended the call. I had had enough. My in-laws were quick to paint me as the villain in their narrative, ignoring the complexities of our situation and twisting the blame onto me. The unfairness of it all was overwhelming, and I felt utterly alone in dealing with this turmoil. After enduring so much for so long without any defense from my husband, who seemed to side with them, I had reached my limit. I decided it was time to put my plan into action. The day of our departure for the luxury cruise finally arrived. My in-laws and Lawrence climbed into the car, brimming with excitement for the trip. I told them I'd meet them at the port, opting to drive separately. As I drove, a flicker of excitement stirred within me. This is going to be a fantastic trip, I murmured to myself, barely suppressing a chuckle. Upon arriving at the port, however, I was taken aback to find it unusually quiet and seemingly deserted. I unloaded everyone's luggage and soaked in the fresh sea breeze, feeling a mix of anticipation and nerves. Lawrence appeared lighthearted and playful, seemingly oblivious to the tension. Just as I was about to join everyone on the boat, my mother-in-law approached me with a wide grin. "Thanks for booking the trip, Grace. We'll see you in 3 weeks. Don't forget to pick us up," she beamed. Confused, I asked, "What do you mean? Aren't we all going on this trip together?" My mother-in-law's smile twisted into a sneer. "Oh, a daughter-in-law is just a stranger to us, don't you understand? As long as you've paid, we're fine." Her words stung, but I kept my composure. Meanwhile, my father-in-law and Lawrence were engrossed in travel magazines. Noticing my stunned expression, Lawrence shrugged and added shamelessly, "Seems like it's true." Then, looking around, he said, "By the way, I don't see any luxury cruise ship. Where is it?" My mother-in-law scanned the area, her suspicion growing with the absence of other passengers. "Did you get the right location, Grace?" she asked sharply. With a calm I didn't feel, I assured them, "Don't worry, just enjoy yourselves from here." I watched as they boarded what was indeed a smaller, much less luxurious boat than they had anticipated. "Is this the right ship?" my father-in-law muttered, eyeing the modest vessel before them. It was a small but fitting twist to our supposed luxury escape, a far cry from what they had expected, but a perfect match to their treatment of me. As they sailed off, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, knowing this trip would be unforgettable, just not in the way they had imagined. "It's just a smaller boat to transfer you to the luxury cruise ship. It's a safety precaution," I reassured them with a composed smile. "Don't worry, get on board quickly," I urged, helping them load their luggage onto the small boat. "Take care," I called out to the boatmen as they set off. Waving goodbye, I shouted cheerfully, "Goodbye, best of luck to you." I could faintly hear my mother-in-law shouting back, but I chose to ignore it. Once they were out of sight, I gathered my things and headed back to my car, looking forward to some peaceful time alone. Later, when I returned home, I collected all the personal belongings I had from before getting married, clothes, appliances, and furniture, and arranged them neatly. Just as I finished, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, her voice frantic and loud. "How dare you trick us? There's no luxury cruise ship. Where are we?" she yelled into the phone. I couldn't help but laugh, the irony of the situation amusing me. After a moment, I calmly replied, "There never was a luxury cruise ship. You tried to leave me behind, so I didn't book anything." Her anger was palpable even through the phone. "Do you really think you can get away with this? Where are we? I could call the police." My father-in-law's voice joined in, his tone incredulous. "The police? That's a bit much, don't you think?" I responded lightly. "I simply brought you to your wife's hometown. Did you get a chance to see Aunt Elizabeth?" There was a pause before my mother-in-law shouted again, "What are you talking about, Aunt Elizabeth? Your older sister, Elizabeth?" Yes, Elizabeth, I spoke to her and she suggested bringing you all here. She'll likely take good care of you, I clarified. Aunt Elizabeth, who had always been like a mother figure to my mother-in-law, was known for her strong stance against dishonesty. Though I had only met her a few times at family gatherings, her integrity had always impressed me. Now, it seemed she would be playing an unexpected role in teaching my in-laws a lesson in humility and respect. We had always gotten along well, so I decided to open up to Aunt Elizabeth and share everything I had been enduring with my in-laws and Lawrence. As I had anticipated, Aunt Elizabeth was outraged, but immediately offered her support. "I'll come pick you guys up soon," she promised before quickly ending the call. Shortly after, I moved to a new apartment closer to my workplace, which significantly eased my daily commute. During the move, I uncovered indisputable evidence of my husband's infidelity. Lawrence had been careless, leaving behind a trail of proof. By the time I settled into my new place, I had collected enough evidence to solidify my case for divorce. With the assistance of a lawyer, I successfully finalized the divorce and also sought compensation for the emotional distress caused by the affair. My lawyer, who met with Lawrence to discuss the settlement, reported that he appeared devastated and worn out. Meanwhile, Aunt Elizabeth, who is a well-respected sports instructor in our local community, had been keeping my in-laws and Lawrence extremely busy with rigorous daily activities, giving them a taste of their own medicine. She mentioned that they could be relieved of their duties if they truly showed remorse. However, the family business had practically gone bankrupt, leaving them with no other options. Their struggles, however, were no longer my concern. I simply hope to never cross paths with them again. On a brighter note, I recently met a kind and understanding man who fully accepts me, including my past and all that led up to my divorce. We've discussed marriage and plan to tie the knot once his work schedule becomes less hectic. Although the road to happiness has been filled with challenges, I am excited about building a joyful life with someone who always puts me first.